Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. I'm your host, Jason Cercone, and today we're going to take a look at 5 things 2020 taught us about podcasting. Now, 2020 was one of those years where everything was unpredictable. The coronavirus pandemic turned business upside down. It forced change in seemingly uncountable ways, and it made us adapt to new ways of communicating. From a podcasting perspective, 2020 ushered in the importance of long-distance recording. Now, this wasn't anything new, but the ability to still produce content and keep shows afloat was made possible by using platforms like Zoom and Skype, and it opened the doors for newer services like Riverside and Squadcast. Many podcasts came to life in 2020 at a time where bringing people together for face-to-face interviews was pretty much on hold. Now, I'm not saying this didn't happen at all, but people congregating in studios is about as limited as it could get. Even major morning TV talk shows like Live with Kelly and Ryan conducted their programming on a remote basis. Even as this episode of Pod Theory goes live in January of 2021, we're still seeing a lot of this as the pandemic wears on. And even when that fateful day comes and COVID-19 is behind us, I still feel you're going to see a lot of news outfits continue to conduct their broadcasts via remote setups. We've seen significant growth in 2020 with podcasting, and I firmly believe this growth is going to continue in 2021 and beyond. Now, of course, I'm not naive with the fact that I know there will be some fallout with podcasts that were started because people, quote unquote, had the time available to make one. But if 2020 gave us anything, it was proof that the podcast platform is viable, and that it's useful, and that it's captivating, and it's gained the attention of millions of listeners looking for innovative ways to connect to the content they love. As we push full speed ahead into 2021, let's take a look back at 5 things 2020 taught us about podcasting. Number 1, we can still produce great content even if we aren't face-to-face with our guests. When it's 100% safe, I think face-to-face podcast recordings will make a big comeback. But the long-distance feature of podcasting isn't going anywhere. The ability to increase your guest list by hooking up through a digital platform is amplified to the max, and that's a precious commodity that no podcaster is going to want to live without. As podcasting's popularity exploded in 2020, the majority of that content was created via remote and long-distance applications. And how much podcast content did you consume in 2020? My guess is whatever you did consume, you felt it was good stuff, right? That says it all. Long-distance podcasting is a great feature, and it's going to continue to grow as we move forward. Number 2, podcasting is a viable way to connect with your audience. Now, I look at 2 factors for this point: the number of active podcasts we have and the number of people who are listening. According to podcastinsights.com, the number of active podcasts has climbed over 1.7 million as of January 2021. As of August 2020, we were around 1 million. So it's basic economics here. Supply is increasing because demand is skyrocketing. People are consuming podcasts in every conceivable space. On their commute, when they're working out, when they're relaxing at home, when they're riding public transportation, when they're taking a walk. More brands have grabbed hold of how powerful it is to be in someone's ear with that much frequency. And if you aren't one of those brands, it's time you take a long, hard look at why you aren't jumping on the podcasting bandwagon. The numbers tell the story. Number 3, podcasts provide solutions. In late 2019, search engines made podcasts discoverable through search queries, and as podcast content grew in 2020, the amount of podcasts getting discovered on sites like Google increased as well. With all that's changed in 2020, one thing that's remained constant is people's unwavering need to find answers to their problems. And if your podcast helps them do just that, they'll not only come back for more content down the road, they'll tell everyone else about how you help them solve a problem. That is pretty tough to beat. Number 4, people got hooked on podcasts due to the downtime they had. Now, they are all in. Now, I don't want to say it took a worldwide pandemic for podcasting to truly explode, but it didn't hurt. Those initial months where we had no idea what was going on and we were being told to stay home and our jobs were being pushed into a work from home environment, a lot of extra time was thrust upon us. And many people use that time to start a podcast, to listen to new podcasts, or to do both. Now, there is some balance to be found here. There were a lot of people who were listening to podcasts on their commutes that may have cut back because they didn't have a commute anymore. But in the grand scheme, 2020 introduced more people to the power of this platform, and as more people discovered there's practically a podcast to satiate any listening desire, well, they're part of this for the long haul, and that's a fact. And finally, number 5, podcasting isn't going anywhere. With all the growth we've seen in 2020, I cannot envision a scenario where podcasting takes a step backwards. If anything, the proven viability that 2020 has brought upon this platform will lead to more brands using a podcast to continue to establish their authority, to build their audience, to provide solutions, and to connect directly with consumers. We'll also see some big moves from the big players like Spotify and Apple. That's inevitable. But there's no denying that podcasting has firmly solidified its relevance in the content space, and there's plenty more good things to come. Listen, 2020 was a year that you may choose to look back on and forget. But before you do that, be sure to reflect on some of the good things that 2020 brought you. Those things are there. You just have to be willing to find them. And as a podcaster, 2020 brought you a lot to be thankful for. And with that, episode 72 of Pod Theory is a wrap. What's something 2020 taught you as a podcaster? I would love to hear your thoughts. Either hit me up on Twitter at Jason Cercone or give me a call or text at 412-965-8428 to discuss. Good talk. I'll see you back here tomorrow. This has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.